It is a real pleasure. I appreciate the invite, Eric. When I'm not a very detailed person when it comes to reading a note. I just saw Eric sent me a text and it said, hey, would you like to speak at men's breakfast? And that's the part I saw, and I saw the date. I didn't see anything else. And I wrote back, I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And immediately the word that came to my mind was impact. Because wherever I go, for years, I've thought, I want to make an impact, because there are people in my life for years that I either watched or heard that I know for a fact made an impact on my life. And I'm a Florence boy. Grew up right here in Florence. Really grew up first on Griffin Street across from the McLeod area, because my family were railroad people. And we could walk across the street, Palmetto then, to Vaughn's Grocery, and walk out in the old neighborhood there and get our hair cut for 10 cents. And then we hit the big time, and my dad and mom moved us to a little house over off of the road that the Sunday house is on. And we rented a house there from Nat Rosenfeld for a number of years. Then we really hit the big time and moved out near McLeod Park. And so that was a big step for us. But there were guys in my life that had impact in my life, and you never forget them. People from scouting and people from church and older guys that could fix bikes in neighborhoods. They were impacting. And so I always grew up thinking, I want to make an impact on people. And so during this talk, if you hear me use the word I too many times, I want to preface it by saying I'm not trying to be a big shot in front of you. When I say I mean God. I mean what God has done in our lives, in my life, in my wife's life. I don't mean to brag at all. If you walk away thinking that, I've messed up really bad, and I don't mean to do that. Please be patient with me. Well, this is my wife, Cindy. She is definitely the better half of my life. We've been married 42 years. We dated 2 years. I was a real disappointment to her family. At first, her brother Russell was the only one in the family that really loved me right off the bat. And it's just because he's a bad judge of character. But it's been an amazing thing what my wife has done for me, and how she's helped me in ministry, and how she makes things happen that I wouldn't think about making happen. And so I want to show you first my wife and talk about the impact that she's had in my life, and give her a big round of applause, because she is absolutely awesome. And she's the mother of our 4 daughters. And I'm thankful for 4 daughters. I had 3 brothers, and we beat the snot out of each other. And when we got married, I told Cindy, I said, babe, I want girls. I don't want boys. She goes, oh, we got to have at least one. I said, no, we don't. I said, I can be the king in the house. And because I have 4 daughters and my beautiful wife, I've never had to make a serious decision in my life. It's a beautiful thing. That's my wife. In 1993, when we were in Ethiopia, Bob Norris, my pastor, came to visit us. And it was an incredible trip for him and for us, for him to come see the project that we were doing in Ethiopia. We were already good buddies. And this is me seeing him one of the last times I ever saw him on the right, when he was getting ready to go home to be with the Lord. But I remember one time when Bob, I was stopped at a red light here in Florence, and this black sports car pulled up beside me and slammed on brakes at the red light, and the window rolled down, and he said, hey, Beeve. And I looked over, I said, what? He said, you want to speak next Wednesday at church? I said, man, I'd love to. I'd never been invited to speak at church before. I said, I'd love to. I said, what do I talk about? He said, talk about how God good is, and talk about 25 minutes. And the light turned green and he took off. That was it. That was my instructions. So I'm here to tell you, I'm only going to talk about 30 minutes maybe. I was told I got 35 minutes, but I'm setting the clock for 30 minutes so I don't bore you. Bob Norris, a huge impact in my life because of missions. He had a missions heart. And Church at Sandhurst has been dedicated to missions since its beginning 40 years ago. And so he had a huge impact in our lives. So let's read this. Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. That's what I don't want to do. I don't want you to think I'm boasting about me or I'm boasting about anything we've done. I'm boasting about God. When Bob said talk about God and how good God is, that's what I hope you get today when I'm finished. Man, God is incredible. This is William Harding III. This is what William Harding III looked like in 1989 when he came to our church during the month of February to speak at our missions conference. He told stories about Ethiopia and what God did in Ethiopia with his family, with his 3 boys that they took there at a young age. And while he was talking, y'all, my guts were on fire. I'm sitting there listening to this guy talk. I'd already been on some mission trips because Sandhurst was a missions church. But this guy and other guys after him fired me up. And so Bill Harding III, Bill Harding Sr., and his wife Elaine were a huge impact in our lives. This is Bill in 1954. He and Elaine are on their way to Ethiopia. He's 26 years old. 26 years old, on their way to Ethiopia with 3 boys. There's me and Cindy in 1992, on our way to Ethiopia with 3 girls. I just want y'all to see it so it's real. It's not made up. It's not a story about somebody else. It's our story and his story and the impact that happens. And so there we are, June 16th, 1992, on the doorsteps of Bill Harding and Elaine. There's his boy, Joe, who was in charge of raising the money for the project that I was going to do in Ethiopia. Here's how this happened. After February, when he had been speaking at the church, well, again, I was greatly inspired. And I was still doing short-term mission trips around. One day, I'm home for lunch. Bob Norris calls, and Bob says, "Hey, Wick, Bill Harding Sr. is going to call you." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I don't know why. He wants to talk to you." The phone rings. That's when you had one phone in the house. Our phone happened to be in the bedroom. The phone rings. I answer the phone. Cindy comes and gets on the bed so she can hear everything going on. I know you don't understand that. And hello? And Bill Harding says, "Wick, this is Bill Harding. I don't know if you remember me." I said, "Remember you?" I said, "I can't even forget you." I said, "I love the story about the monkey putting his hand in the hole and he can't get his hand out. I love the story about the flood when you got stuck in the river. And I love," he said, "Ho, ho, ho." He said, "I want to ask you, would you be interested in coming to Ethiopia and building the international church and the seminary?" I said, yeah, we'll do it." He says, "Okay, meet me June 16th, 1992. Meet me June 16th in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Shoney's down from the SIM headquarters." I said, "Okay, we'll be there." Click. Cindy looks at me. She goes, "Wick, what did you just do?" I said, "Baby, where is Ethiopia?" I didn't know. Eagle Scout, extremely geographically challenged. I had no idea. We end up there that day, June 16th, to meet with Bill Harding Sr., the first Ethiopian I ever met, Gutta Demisi, and Joe Harding, and a huge set of plans. So we have our little lunch, and we're eating our lunch together. We finish lunch. They say, "Hey, you probably want to see the plans." I said, "Sure, let's look at the plans." The plans are bigger than anything I've ever seen. They're huge plans and rolled up in a big ball. And so I roll them out on a table, and I'm going, Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they say, what do you think? I say, oh, yeah. I had no clue. I didn't know what I was looking at. And it was all in metric. No inches and quarter inches, and all in metric. Yeah. After lunch, we leave. They say, okay, well, you start raising your money. That was another big issue. I said, beg for money? They said, no, you're not begging. I said, no, that's begging. God raised our money up in a matter of months so that we ended up in Ethiopia on November 16th, 1992. Just months later, selling everything, getting rid of everything. But at night, I would get those plans out and go over them and said, I can't, because you know what? When we were leaving that meeting, Cindy said, Wick, what have you done? I said, I don't know. She said, you can't do it. I said, I know. Thank you, honey, I know. So we get back and I'm looking at those plans at night when I get off work. I'm looking. And I'm saying, I can't. I don't understand. I can't. And one night when I'm sitting there belly aching about what I can't do, the Lord said to me, you're right, you can't. And I said, that's what I've been saying. He said, you can't, but we can. That's when it clicked. When I said, He will help me. And so we landed there with our 3 girls in Ethiopia and started the biggest project that SIM had done to that date. One of the biggest projects ever for SIM. And here I am on the 2nd floor of the seminary, because you see where we framed up the church back in the back. God blessed it, and I had 200 Ethiopians that would walk around with me on the job site, wanting to hold my hand. Ethiopians love to hold your hand. Guys, they hold hands, they hug. It's a very, very close culture. So to hold some guy's hand and sit with him at lunch holding his hand or having your hand on his lap means nothing other than I love you and you're special and I'd kill for you. That's that culture. And so here I am. There's Joe Harding again after he grew up in that country and went back to serve in that country. And then Malcolm McGregor on the right, and then Mike, my logistics guy. It was an incredible time. There I am with my guys up on the roof, Freeman, Ilikal, and Chetty, and I can't remember the other 2 guys' names. But up on top of that roof, 60 feet up in the air, enjoying the heck out of that. There I am with my backside showing everybody. The second port, that's the balcony of the church. Working alongside those guys, eating lunch with them every day, passing time with them. It wasn't the construction project that was the most important. It was the guys' lives that I was able to be involved with. That's, the project when we left, that's it. You say, God, that's really impressive. And it is. But what's more impressive is the guys. Falling in love with the guys. Maraja, Mengistu, Eremias, Kabada, Ilikal, Desta. All those boys that I still know. The lives and investing in those lives. Teaching those guys about business. Teaching them about life skills. Teaching about how a guy can go into a kitchen and clean dishes. Oh, no, we don't do that in Ethiopia. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Let's clean some dishes, boys. So I'd have guys' night at my house on Friday. We'd watch a movie. We'd be in the kitchen cooking, which you don't do that. And then after that, we'd be in the kitchen cleaning. You don't do that, but we did it. It impacted those guys' lives. Even shepherd boys would show up on a job site to cast Hailu, Jesus, Abraham. Those boys came to the gate and they said, we're from Gondar. We need a place to live. If you let us keep sheep on your property, we'll keep the sheep and you let us live in a container. We said, you got a deal. So those boys, little tiny boys, came and they're in sheep's clothing. You see them. They were true shepherds. And they grew sheep on the job site. Every now and then we would have a sheep and share it with everybody working. It was an incredible time. These are 3 guys that were with me when they were in their 20s. There's Mengistu, he's 22 when I met him. Eremias, 24 when I met him. And Chetty, 23 when I met him. And this photograph here, 30 years later, they're in their 50s. And we stayed close all these years. A note here or a note there, or someone traveling in Ethiopia coming back saying, they wanted to say hey to you. I heard about it, whatever. I got a call from Kubata. He's not up there. I got a call from Kubata yesterday. And he said, Goshi, Danana, how are you? How are you, Danana? Wodalo, I love you. I said, Wodalo, Cubby. Danana, are you okay? Yes, thank God we're okay. I said, okay, ciao, click. You know, it's incredible what God has done through Bill Harding and his connections that get us to a place like this in another part of the world. After we left there, after we leave Ethiopia, I'm still involved in missions and projects. This is me and Tommy Head in a project in Peru, working together. Because missions doesn't leave. When you leave a project, missions doesn't get out of your guts. It's in your blood. It's in your blood. It's deep in you. Even the way you think about water. Now, how much do I let this water run out? Because I know other friends that walk 2 and 3 miles for clean water. So, do I water my lawn? Do I not water my lawn? It affects everything. It affects your money. It affects your thinking. It affects your family time. It affects everything. So in 1998, with 4 daughters, which is one thing that I prayed for, I'd prayed for the Lord to give me 4 daughters, and He did. There's 4 daughters in 1998. This is after a time of when we were thinking, we got back in 94, we were thinking, Lord, what do you want us to do now? Because it can't be here. This can't be it. We got too much energy. And so the Lord was going to send us somewhere else. We went on a excursion trip in 97 for 6 weeks. 2 weeks in the jungle in Peru, 2 weeks in a city called Ica in Peru, which, Tom, you were there with us, and 2 weeks in a city called Cochabamba, Bolivia. We felt God calling us to Cochabamba, Bolivia. So in 1998, we moved to Cochabamba, Bolivia. There's 2 of my best friends. Henry Chea from Malaysia. Miles, you know Henry. Henry Chea from Malaysia, and Johnny Marca, an incredible pastor. The only PhD pastor in Bolivia. Dallas Theological Seminary trained pastor. Incredible guy with a missions heart. But when I first got there, I wasn't involved in teaching and stuff. I was involved in construction. I wanted teams to come and us build things because that's how God changed my life. But I met this guy, Dave Anderson, who had a huge impact on my life. Dave was a pastor for 35 years, going around the world doing mission trips, short-term mission trips, and was always invited to speak. And when he spoke in these places, he would challenge people into missions. And people would, one after another, young people and older people, come up and say, I want to do missions, but my church doesn't do it. And then he'd come, I want to do missions, but my elders don't understand it. I want to do missions, but my pastor said it's not important. So Dave put together the World Impact Seminar. And Dave approached me. He said, Wick, you're a teacher. I said, no, I'm a construction guy. He said, no, you're a teacher. I said, I'm really not. I said, I don't like to, I'm a construction guy. For the last 20 years, I've been teaching. Me and Henry Chea, Johnny Marca, and other Bolivians that we've trained, and Peruvians that we've trained, and Ecuadorians that we've trained to teach this material. Yo puedo hablar en español. Yo puedo enseñar este material muy claro. La mayoría de la gente puede entenderme. Pero los bolivianos pueden enseñar mucho mejor que yo. You understand what I'm saying?
Nope.
Some of you do. I can teach this all day long in Spanish. I travel around the world teaching this in Spanish. But my Bolivian friends can teach it better in Spanish. Plus, they're Bolivian. And so when a Bolivian teaches another Bolivian, they kind of take it on. They say, oh, it's not just this gringo teaching us. You're teaching me, and you're proving I can do it. And that's why it's taken off. And so for the last 20 years, we've gone all over Bolivia and Peru and South America, Argentina, all over South America, teaching this material. When we first started teaching this material, very few churches, there were only 2 people involved in missions in Bolivia. 2 people. Now, y'all, after 20 years, there's hundreds of people and many churches involved in world missions now and sending people to Nepal, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, places you and me can't go. Not very well. And God has equipped them to do it. And God has allowed us to be involved in that. Again, coming back from Bolivia after years, still having teams. You guys will recognize people in those photographs. They're Florence people. Mission teams to impact people's lives. Here's what happens. You think, oh, everything's peachy. And then this happens. You say, how does that happen? You're doing what God wanted you to do. Exactly. So on December 21, 2001, we're having a Christmas party around the house. Me and my 4 daughters and my wife. And there's a little burner with some oil in it. And underneath was supposed to be a sterno lighter. You can't get sterno in Bolivia. So what do? You improvise. You take a cotton ball and you put it in something and you put alcohol on that. Well, again, not thinking, I see that the fire looks like it's gone out. Plus the oil isn't cooking good. I must need to put more alcohol. I put alcohol on a burning flame that I could not see. It exploded and caught my wife on fire like crispy bacon in seconds. I was, the girls are screaming. I was thrashing around the floor trying to grab anything I could to put on top to put the fire out. She was burning. I finally was able to put her on her face where smoke's coming out, and I put my hands like that to stop it. It finally went out. When we sat up on the floor and she held her arms out, all this skin was like spaghetti. And I told the girls, get towels, get wet towels. It took 6 days to get her out of Bolivia. We didn't have medical flights and that kind of stuff, not in Bolivia. We flew her out on a commercial plane in first class. It was the first time we ever flew first class. We flew out, got to Miami. Russell's mama met us in Miami, and they flew off to Augusta, Georgia in a Learjet, an air ambulance. She landed in Augusta, Georgia. It took me several days to get to Augusta, Georgia, because I was trying to organize other stuff. But I got there. And when I got there, I told the doctor, I said, man, I'm so glad she's here. He said, we're trying to save her. I said, what do you mean you're trying to save her? We're here. He said, she's dying. Everything, all of her systems shutting down. She's dying. She's in terrible shape. And it was a miracle. People around the world were praying for her. It was a miracle. And so on January 8th, I know it's January 8th because there's Lizzie on the left. She's holding her sixth birthday card. She wanted to see her mama on her birthday. She's 6 years old. There we are. Cindy's alive. She spent a month in the hospital there, getting better, getting stronger. Then she moved to her mom and dad's house where she had to eat a very high protein diet and had to start stretching parts of her body because of the skin grafts and all this stuff. It was incredible. But God used it. God used it. He doesn't waste anything. And so Cindy started Burn Care International. Burn Care International, she started her first clinic in Cochabamba, Bolivia, where we were living. We quit counting after 30,000 people, how many people they had helped at that clinic. And that's been years ago. We quit counting after 30,000. In your poorer populations, there are massive burns because people are cooking on the floor, or the parents have to go out and work early in the morning and late at night, and there's fires that the kids, little children, have to keep warm because they're freezing. So the burns are incredible. And so Sydney has little children like this that come to her, and the parents say, can you help us? At this stage, many times it's too late. But this is from a fire. And this is preventable with special suits that my wife and her team make. This is preventable. This little boy here in Ethiopia burned very, very badly, but the result came out wonderful. This little girl here in Egypt, Her whole body just burned, and her fingers burned off. And you see her little face there. Incredible burns, incredible pain. But it's what's incredible is a special touch from someone like my wife who knows what they've been through and who says, I love you. And she's touching them because so many people don't want to touch them. They're nasty. They're, oh, you're burnt. I don't, maybe I'll hurt you if I touch you. My wife hugs them, shows them she loves them. It's an incredible ministry. This is in Palestine and Egypt. Cindy never thought that she would work with Muslims. And now when we're in Egypt and Palestine and other places around the world in Africa, she's working with Muslims, loving them to pieces. China, wherever God calls her. She's getting ready to go to Vietnam in February. Wherever God calls her. These are 3 women that are key. This is Juana in the pink. Juana came to live with us when we moved to Bolivia years ago. She and her daughter Sandra. Sandra is our 5th daughter because Juana and Sandra moved in with us and became a part of our family. Now Juana, for many years, has run the burn clinic. While Cindy's away, it's still being run. Still seeing hundreds of people a week. Suits being made, all that. There's Maria, one of the seamstresses. There's Barbara. Barbara is not a Christian. Barbara is in the Baha'i faith. And Barbara thinks that all roads lead to the Lord in the end. Let's just be nice to one another. We've loved them since 1998. They were our neighbors, and she's a huge part of that ministry. And they all have traveled with Cindy to other parts of the world. And then in 2023, 30 years later, I get a call from Mengistu. Mengi says, Gushy, I have a chance for us to teach the World Impact Seminar in Ethiopia. We can go to the place where Bill Harding Sr. started his ministry. I said, I'm there. So I went in 2023. I show up in March, and we start planning. And we go to a place called Yidikichefi, where Bill Harding Sr. went with his 3 children years ago when he was 26. And we're teaching the World Impact Seminar for the first time in Ethiopia. It also gave me a chance to go back to my church that I hadn't been at in 30 years. There I am at the front door. Gosh, I'm handsome. Inside the church, I hadn't seen it cleaned up. When I left it, it was a construction site. And here it is cleaned up and the floors waxed and all. It was an incredible feeling for me to see that. That church is one of the places that from Ethiopia, from Africa, architects come to the city and take tours of it because there's nothing else built like that in all of Africa. It's an incredible place. There's Mingi. So that's when he's 22 years old. Here's where he's 52 and we're teaching together. That's where he can understand me so well that as I'm teaching the seminar, he's translating. Incredible. The impact that you have on someone's life. While we were there, I went to the church the first Sunday. After the meeting, I went up to the pastor and I shook his hand. I said, hey, I'm Wick Jackson. I said, I sent you an email, told you I was coming. I said, you know, it's really neat to be here. I said, me and 200 Ethiopians built this thing 30 years ago. He said, yeah, it's good to see you. Okay, take care. And he walked away. And so after that, Mingi, we went back to where we were staying, and Mingi said, Wick, what did the pastor say? I said, he didn't say nothing. He said, good to see you. See you later. Mingi says, he must not understand. 2 days later, we get a call. It's the pastor. He calls me at the guest house headquarters. He says, Wick. He said, it's you. I said, yeah. He goes, no, it's you. You're the guy that built the church with the Ethiopians. I said, yeah, that's what I tried to tell you Sunday. He said, yeah, I didn't get it. Can you come to a meeting? We've got big problems. So they go to a meeting where they say, the land behind the church is all being washed away. And there it is. You see huge ravine, it being washed away. And they're asking me, Wick, can you help us with this? And so I want y'all to see. You see me pointing like this? And that's where I'm going, And I'm thinking, oh no. What do you mean, can I help? Well, how in the world can I help with this problem? Listen, I left that meeting and I said, I have to call Cindy to see if I can stay a little longer, but let me call her and I'll get back with you guys and let you know what I've come up with. That night, where I'm waxing eloquent and pointing down here, God literally gives me a vision of what to do with these huge gabion baskets full of stone. A gabion basket is a heavy wired basket that we built 7 feet wide, 13 feet long, and 1 meter high. And you stack these up along the river, clean out the river first, stack these up to create a wall that will protect the property and gain land back. So that was the plan. Then we had to get a group of guys. Again, the Lord sends me these young men, hardworking guys that will move rock 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, except for lunch, 70-pound rocks, 60-pound rocks, all day long, walking down. It's got to be done by hand. There's no machines. And they do it. $4 a day. And that's considered good money. My guys thought they hit the jackpot. When they come, we work 6 days a week. So if they showed up for every day of the week, 6 days, I would give them an extra bonus, an extra $4 on payday. Dude, you would have thought that I was giving them a Roth IRA. They were so happy. Plus they got to eat incredible good meals for lunch. 1 rock at a time. 1 rock at a time. 1 rock at a time. Hundreds of thousands of rocks. This is May 1st, 2023. We're going down in the river. You see it's rainy season. The river's up a little bit, but we're going down in there anyway to clean out a spot to put the first basket. 7 days later, you see what we're doing. We're throwing dirt into the river so that we can build our wall there and drive that rebar all down in there. Thousands of pieces of 3/4 inch rebar driven into the riverbed. That's what it looked like when we started. That's what it looked like 4 months later. All done by hand. All done by hand. SIM had been given a price by engineers in Ethiopia. They said, oh, we'll do it for $2.5 million and it's going to take us 7 years. So in the first meeting where I was with the guys, I said, I haven't worked here in a long time. I said, but I don't think it's going to cost us $2.5 million, and I know it ain't going to take me 7 years. And so we are finished with that project now. We're finished saving another building that was condemned. We're finished rescuing other parts of the wall, and it's all come to about $540,000, and we've done it all within 8 months. That's God. It ain't me driving, golly, Wick, you're so awesome. No, my guys in orange shirts and yellow shirts that carry stones are awesome. And I get to disciple them. We have Bible studies together. You see, you can't just throw the stone in. The stones have to be placed in. If you throw a stone in, it loses its strength. Those stones have to be placed in so that they hold together. You see the wall. You see the curve. There's my boys, disciples, loving on them. There's Kubota in 1992. There's Kubota 30 years later. Man, he came 3 hours to see me, to hug me, and for us to have tea. And then he went 3 hours back. There's, again, Mingy, Ermias, and Chetty. Those boys were with me on the building. But listen to this. Here's Ermias. He worked for SIM. After I left, he got a job with SIM as their maintenance guy. He would come to the job site and work with me when he had days off because he loved being with us. So here he is. This is one of the buildings that we fixed that was condemned. There's Ermias in there on the floor, making sure things are right. This is a little bit after we got in concrete, put in some sheetrock, some lighting. Ermias. Here he is at 23 years old when he came to work for me on the job site without bullets. He didn't bring all the armor with him. He was in the war. He was dangerous. Oh, I got to stop. I'm sorry. Can I go on just a few more minutes?
Yeah.
He was dangerous, but he came to know the Lord. Cherry came to know the Lord. Mengistu came to know the Lord. These guys came to know the Lord on this job site. It changed their lives. It changed their families' lives. When I had a birthday party here, when I was living there in 1993, for my 1994, for my 35th birthday, 19 people showed up. Mingi, Ermias, Chetty, different guys that were close to me. When I was there, 30 years later, and they knew it was my birthday, they threw me a party. 79 people show up. You know why? They got married. They got married. They started having kids. All of a sudden, all these people that I had an indirect impact on start showing up. And you say, that's incredible. This is July 7th, 2024, my last time with Ermias. You know why? He came to have lunch with me there. We had lunch, we kissed, we hugged, we talked about old stories. I left. 10 days later, I got a call. He went home to be with the Lord. They don't even know how. They don't know what happened. He went home to be with the Lord. We all say, oh, yeah, you know, it happens that way. And we think we know what's going on. But we don't never know what's going to go on. We cannot time things. We better make daggum sure that we are impacting the people we are around when we have a chance. Mike Wilson, Dan Temple, Bo Myers, all these guys I paid to come this morning. They came there to see it and work on the project. Nobody from my church other than Bob had ever seen it, and especially finished. These guys came to see it. That's huge. Messman, he was a street boy. He came to me and said, I need food, I need money, I don't have a mama, I don't have a daddy. I said, I can't help you. Please, Gushy. This is over 30 years ago. Please, Gushy, help me. I don't have a home. I said, I tell you what, Messman, you come to the job site and I'll give you a job. He came to the job site. He got saved there. He got baptized in the church that we built. Messman got baptized. You know where Messman is now? He's in the United States of America working with Samaritan's Purse, running their Christmas boxes. That's what he does. Tekest, remember Tekest, the shepherd boy? There's Tekest. He said, Gushy, I want you to teach me to be a carpenter. So at 17, I've got a photograph of Tekest where I've taught him to be a carpenter. You know what Tekest does now? He travels the world. He's a gospel senior for the Ethiopian church. He travels the world. He's in Addis Ababa right now. I know because Kavita told me yesterday. He's world famous in Ethiopia. Look what God has done with shepherd boys. Then this is the old wall that I built 30 years ago, right there. That's the original wall. Here's the new wall we're connecting to it, starting a new life. There's what it looked like. There's what it looked like after. And there's me pointing, waxing eloquent. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. There it is from the air. All this red part back here and all the wall, you see it, is all land that we regained, over 2.5 acres of land for the church property. Incredible. Again, 1992 on their doorstep, 2025 at his house, praying with him the last time. Here he is. Just the other day, he went home to be with the Lord at 97 years old. The man that impacted my life so much and impacted other people's lives. Not only going to Ethiopia, but then going to South America and going all over the world in missions, impacting people's lives. There he is. When they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. That's after Peter and John had rescued a cripple. They got in trouble by the religious authorities. When they got in trouble, it didn't matter. Over 5,000, Scripture says over 5,000 people came to know Jesus at that healing. And so here they are, these smart people. They noticed that they were unschooled, ordinary men, and they took note they had been with Jesus. Here's my last thought. We'll be most impactful when people notice that we've been with Jesus. No other way. It doesn't matter what I say, it's not going to last. I'm going to be gone in an instant, and you are too. I can't hardly remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I know we've made an impact in people's lives. And the only way you're going to make an impact in people's lives is with they can tell there's something different with you. You follow Jesus. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for time to hang out with dear brothers and friends. Thank you for these guys that prayed before we even got started, that it would go well. Thank you for lives that were spent impacting other people like me and other guys here. Thank you for your influence in other men's lives, men and women's lives that help us get where we are. Thank you for my sweet wife who makes me better than I'll ever be by myself. Thank you for these guys. Help us, Lord, to follow you. If we don't know you, Lord, help us find you. Help us talk to friends or people we trust. There's no life worth living without Christ. Absolutely no life worth living without Christ. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.